Hello and welcome back. This is part two of my technology portfolio, and I'm going to pick up with my final tool for formative assessments. This is called Socrative, and in Socrative, one of the nice things about it is that I can do all kinds of different types of questions for formative assessment. So, for instance, this one is multiple choice. How did Desiree come to the Valmonde family? And let's say we pick she was found on the side of the road. Let's see if I'm able to do it. I might be in the version, okay, this is the teacher version. So I'm not able to click on the answers, but I do want you to see, let's go to the next. So this one, the second question is a true false question. And if I want to, I can incorporate feedback here to reinforce the idea if the student gets it or does not get it. To be quite honest, though, this is low-level learning, just basically a reading check from the text. So, for instance, after reading an old letter, Armand discovers his mother was of African descent. I could have in the feedback, if they click that that's true, I could have that no, that's actually false because it was his father who he discovers was of African descent. So that's a nice tool that or feature that you can add in is the feedback. Um, this one I have is a fill in the blank, which can be tricky. You really do have to be careful when you do this type of a question for students. And here I have another multiple choice, another true false. So I only have 5 here, but it's a nice way to mix it up a little bit and have the kids work on different types of questions. But what's really nice about this tool is that I can receive instant feedback about my students' scores, which eliminates the time that I would spend grading these formative assessments. But it also, more importantly, it allows me to know exactly what we need to address in class as far as student weaknesses are concerned. So I would receive a chart with information about each student's response, and then that gives me that accurate quantitative information without having to calculate it myself. And as an English teacher, I'll be honest with you, math is not my strong suit, so it sounds like heaven to have a tool that will do it for me. This tool also identifies the percentage of students who got each question correct. So I really know which concepts or questions would need more work. In saying that, I think that possibly if I'm going to use this tool, I would try to formulate questions that are a little bit higher in the taxonomy. It's challenging with these types of questions to do that, but I believe that you can get a little bit more into the higher levels if you really think about the questions, and that would definitely give me more accurate results as far as if the students are being able to, if they can apply the information, if they're able to analyze things. So I also like the fact that this tool offers a kind of a pre-made exit slip that I could keep, even though it's very general. I could keep it and always use it, or not always, but sometimes use it in place of something I've thought of that's more specific to allow to check for understanding quickly at the end of the lesson. So I really believe this is a strong tool, and ultimately I think out of the 3 we did, it is my favorite. I need to work a little bit more with it to feel like I know more about it, to become an expert on this tool. But so far I think this one has for me the most to offer. All right, so this next tool we're going to talk about is the idea of creating basically for this course we created a digital simile, but what is more important is that it's showing a way students can create a digital story, making a storyboard and putting things together with visuals and music or video. I used iMovie for this. I'm just very comfortable with iMovie. and it's a fairly easy tool to use. I do like the transitions that it uses. I'm sure there are better ones out there, and to be quite honest, I'm not going to be the expert in technology in the room. Chances are my students are going to know a lot more than I do. So I think part of this idea of them creating a digital storyboard with visuals and videos, I think will be them finding a tool that they just love and they want to use. And I'll probably learn more in the process. But for this one, I used iMovie. I'll play a little bit for you, but I just want to briefly talk about digital citizenship in general, and the concept that, we're able to use to be a digital citizen. We need to be able to use technology responsibly, appropriately, and that encompasses being able to be safe online and respect the property of others. So this idea is something that I need to help my students become more aware of, especially, well, it is twofold. I mean, respecting other people's property is extremely important in an academic situation, and we will touch more on that later in this presentation. But ultimately, as a parent and a future teacher, the safety online concerns me. It concerns me that students don't understand how much of what they put out there is public knowledge. It becomes visible to everyone, and I really want to take some time each school year for each course to discuss how we can be safe online and not just use technology for fun, social media purposes. That's great, and I'm sure we can integrate that into the classroom as well, but also, ways to for instance, this that I'm going to show you, to tell our story, to even preserve that story. So here's a brief clip of my digital simile, which is essentially a digital story about myself. So just to recap, I really enjoyed this project because it allowed me to, it wasn't it wasn't a tough project. It was just a nice reinforcement to say how quickly, one of my kids in the future classroom will be able to do this so quickly. They'll be able to pull up images and they'll be able to put something together so fast. What's going to be challenging for them is pulling up images that are legal for them to use, and we'll get into that later. But I liked how I saw I don't want to say effortlessness because it still took time, but how you can ask students to do something that's not necessarily going to take them 2 hours to create. They may be able to come up with something like this in 45 minutes, and depending on the criteria that I give them. But through this one, with images and a brief statement, I was able to tell a little story about my connection to technology. So a couple ideas I have. Let's just go back. I don't want to keep looking at the reference page. We'll just go back to the beginning here. I could have them work on writing a story, and as an added performance task, so in addition to writing using the literacy domain of writing, I could have them compile this digital story to accompany that. And this taps into visual literacy, media literacy, digital literacy. So they're getting all sorts of extra literacy skills by simply incorporating one project like this. And what would be great is to show maybe a model of a digital story first to get them excited before they begin writing, so that they know where they're going to get to take this. They're not just going to be writing, they're going to actually get to take this and put it on screen and show everyone. So I like that idea as a motivator. Now, to work on their speaking skills, which is also a part of teaching literacy, students could record their voices through this type of a digital story. So kind of like I'm speaking to you right now, only instead of a screencast, they would have the story in digital visual format, maybe some music underneath, and they could vocally tell the story, and that would help them work on their speaking skills. And then we could provide feedback for those speaking skills. Another interesting idea I was thinking about would be that students could present an argument in the format of a digital story. Now, this would be challenging, but while it would be supporting their growth as a writer and a speaker in persuasion, an argumentative digital story could also expose them to the art of advertisement and marketing, selling one side of a story in the commercial sense. So I really like that idea as well. I think there's a lot that we could do. It doesn't always have to be a personal story. They could recap something from history. So this is just a really nice tool to get kids involved in different literacy skills, and yet again, kinesthetically working, get them off their feet. So moving on. Okay, so the next topic I'm going to talk about are some trends in technology, or I'm sorry, trends in education using technology. So we have virtual reality, we've got flipped classrooms, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, QR codes, digital storyboards I just spoke to, and wearable technology. There's so much going on that's happening that, possibly in my area with a lower socioeconomic base, we may have trouble with some of these things, but it is my hope that while I am a teacher in the course of my career, I will be able to implement a lot of this wonderful technology. So we did what's called an infographic. It's a visual representation of information. It can include basically anything, facts, images, videos, and yet again, this is working on encompassing all kinds of literacy skills, visual media, informational, digital, if I didn't say that one. And these are all things that I need to tap into to really cover the Common Core for my ELA, for my English language arts class. So I used a tool called Piktochart to create mine. I love this tool. It was very easy to use. It's pretty much already set up to have a beautiful layout for your infographic. My infographic addressed the trend of digital storytelling. And while that trend may be a bit dated, it's been around for a little bit, to me it was a new concept. I didn't know about it, so it's something I really wanted to learn more about. And by having this task of creating an infographic, I essentially was the one doing the research to teach myself about a concept. What a beautiful idea for students to do the learning, teach themselves the concept, because when you teach yourself, you learn a lot more than just listening to somebody speak for 15, 20 minutes. So instead of presenting the information that you would research in a paper format, I was able to present this in a way that could easily teach other people about the concept. I was able to be creative, which is something we need to continue to nurture in our students. Allow them to be creative, allow them to explore possibilities. So making this infographic, here's another, I should be sliding through this, I apologize. Here's a video I put in right here. Some bright images, bullet points, not too much text, just to kind of make a nice layout so we're not having to read too much. This was a nice little chart wheel. They could see the process of making the story. Another video here. Bullet points. Here's somebody speaking at a TED Talk about the power of digital stories. And these were some ideas that we could use in a classroom to prompt students, and some tools that allow for easy ways to tell digital stories. And then I wrap it up with a kind of why not. So this infographic itself was kind of soliciting the idea of we should be doing this in our classrooms to teachers. My audience was the teachers. So also this is a great way to teach students about having to compile something for a particular audience. So they need to know their audience, which is something we have to do with writing, speaking all the time. We always have to know our audience. I'm going to move along to part 3 of this as I'm running out of time, so we'll pick up in just a second on part 3.